Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we all?
Wonderful. How are you, Schmitty? You well?
Not bad at all, not bad, yes.
Very
Boys?
well over here in the valley where we've had a bit of a farm day today. So, drenching sheep and walking through mud and all those sorts of fun things.
Feel alive, I bet.
Excellent.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Apparently, I saw something come up on Facebook or somewhere might have been Apple News during the week, and it said that getting earth between your hands and everything is now actually scientifically proven to be good for you.
I think that's right. They often talk about if you have no shoes on, you can touch the ground. It's like being grounded or something. I see lots of references to that in the last couple of years.
In summer, all the time up
yeah.
here. Beautiful. We got lovely, thick, lush grass, and
Oh,
it's something that
nice.
you just don't get enough of, I think, anymore.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
it's
There's
so
not many
good.
opportunities to do it, is there? Even if you are outside on the grass, you tend to have shoes on. Or here it's like boiling
it's
hot
normally in
asphalt.
public or something. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
it's like if you've got, let's say you've got thongs and you go to the beach, and it's like usually it's simply too hot to walk on the ground. So lush grass is such a treat.
Mm.
Wouldn't think so to go off on that
Yes.
tangent. What
Anyway,
about you,
enough
Schmitty?
about me. Well,
Oh, no, I'm good. I'd taken all these oranges off the tree. So today I have chopped up a whole lot of them and started to make some citrus gin. So I've got a couple of big, giant jars, I suppose you'd call them, with chopped up oranges covered in gin. And the rest of the oranges are in the pot ready for a new marmalade because I'm the marmalade queen. So a very domestic day for me today, yes. So what are we drinking?
we are having, and we've had this before, it's a Halden Estate Edgar Wallace Cab Sav. So it's a very
We do
delicious
love a
one.
good Halden.
We do love a good
Yes.
Halden, and you might remember from earlier episodes, Edgar Wallace is Tracy's father,
Grandfather
I
or
think?
father-in-law
Yeah,
or something.
like that.
Yeah,
And
a relation.
his ashes are in the vineyard, in the
Yeah.
vines. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yes.
It's a bit part of
Yeah.
him in every bottle.
Right. And what about you? Oh, I don't know that I feel as good about that. And you, Swanny?
Probably depends on which part.
I'm on a bottle of San Pellegrino. We went out and had a Chinese dinner last night that was rather salty. So salty, in fact, that when we left, I said to my brother-in-law, who's a GP, I said, I'm not sure if that was the best meal for Seb before his tennis semi-final. And he said, well, he won't get any cramps. It was so salty.
That's a good point.
So I find myself a little dehydrated today. So let me have some water to start off with, and we see how we go after that. And you, Schmitty?
Okay. I am drinking a glass of the Delatite Winery's Pinot Gris 2021, and it is absolutely delightful.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yes, I thought I'd actually drink a wine for once, given we are
Trial
trying
by
wine.
wine.
In fact,
Wine.
who are we? I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny,
And I'm Clarkey.
and
And
together we are
Trial
by
Wine.
Not sure why that has to get slower and slower.
I
every
know,
week,
it
but anyway.
does.
I don't know.
I was looking at you like you're orchestrate, like the orchestra conductor then, and I still can't
Ah.
keep time.
All right, Swanny, I think you're up tonight, aren't you?
I am indeed. Now, I wanted to start this story off by saying that I set myself a little challenge the other day. My mother has arrived in town, and she never fails to arrive without some trashy mag that she's bought to read on the plane. I'm not convinced she doesn't do it when she's at home. She says she doesn't, but I mean, why you'd then choose to buy this thing and have someone see you
Yeah.
read it in public is beyond me. Surely this is the kind of thing you would read secretly at home.
Well, but some people have like these little, routines, a little
Absolutely.
traditional things. Yeah.
You have to get it delivered in plain packaging envelope so that no one knows.
Correct. I'm
That's
not sure
life.
what's inside it because I've never looked. So she might be able to say, oh, look, I do it for the word puzzles or whatever else, but I'm not sure given
Yeah,
that
it's like that's why she gets the Playboys too. For the good
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
I read it for
Articles.
the editorial, yeah. So it just so happened on the back of her That's Life, there was a sealed section.
Is that
On
life? Thank you. Oh, a
sealed
seal
section.
A
section.
sealed
Oh,
section that I have I ripped off. I don't even know if it was sealed now that I say that. I ripped it off the back. A true crime special, and I thought I'm going to set myself the
Excellent.
challenge of having to use one of the stories that I could find, and I think there were 3 or 4. I'm kind of pretty pumped because every single one of the stories that I looked at, and particularly one, they were lifted directly from Wikipedia. So I feel pretty confident that
Well done.
if people are doing it in press, I'm not as bothered with some of the stuff I trot out here as my sources. So I have chosen one of the crimes, and of course I've got a list of sources. One of those is Wikipedia. That's where I know they got their article from because I don't even think they really bothered to edit it. So I've got my That's Life Crime Sup, Wikipedia, LA Mag, LA Times, Murderpedia, and Time Magazine.
I like Metapedia.
It's a good mix.
It is. And to throw something else into the mix, I also started watching a film called Too Close to Home. 1997 was when it was made. There's another Too Close to Home. And it starred Judith Light and Ricky Schroeder.
Oh, my Lord.
Do we have any Ricky Schroeder?
Who was that little blonde-haired kid?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, this was a straight to TV, a daytime sort of movie. I have to admit, I didn't get past the first 20 minutes, but I wouldn't mind watching it because it was so bad. I was uncomfortable watching it in the first 20 minutes. But as I get onto the story, you'll understand why it would be uncomfortable to watch anyway. But I just had to say, because Judith Light, who I actually think is fabulous, and I've seen her in, I think it was The Politician that was on Netflix in the last couple of years. She was brilliant in that.
Okay.
So I think she's a brilliant actress. And Ricky Schroeder, I think I probably had the hots for. I just can't remember what he was in. Silver Spoons, does that ring any bells or something?
Yes.
That's it, yeah.
That was it, yeah.
He went to be on in NYPD Blue or one of those.
Oh,
too,
you're
I
right.
think.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah.
I've forgotten about that. Well,
Look
this
at me
must
go
have
with
been
my pop
this
culture.
must have been between the two, I'm sure.
I couldn't pick Judith Light out from a lineup of 10
would.
blokes and her.
You
I
would. She
wouldn't
was
know.
in the one with the dad who had Alyssa Milano as the daughter. What's that called? Tony Romero.
Tony Danza.
Tony Danza, yeah.
Danza, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold
What's
me
it?
closer, Tony
Danza.
Danza.
What was the name of that show?
Who's the boss?
Yes.
Or
Who's
Growing
the Boss?
Pains. I get those two
Oh,
mixed up.
I think
one
it's-
on after the
Who's
other.
the boss?
Who's the boss?
the
But who
boss?
was she been? Because she
Yeah.
must. It was.
She was the mum and he was the
I
housekeeper.
still couldn't pick her out.
Is
of
that
the
what it
lineup.
was? Oh, so
Yeah.
but the dad was. But was he the dad of Alyssa Milano? No.
Yeah.
No.
it's-
Oh,
in the
yes,
show?
he was. Yes.
Because she was only
Yeah.
young then. Like
Yeah.
She was a 13-year-old girl or something.
Yeah.
Who's the boss? Yeah, it's them.
You talked about Ricky Schroeder, and I
Yeah.
just kept thinking, I don't want to be a dickhead. I don't want to say it because I'm probably wrong.
Have I
but
said
I
wrong?
had little.
Yeah.
No, I had little Lord Fauntleroy in my head.
It
And I
is him,
thought,
isn't
no,
it?
I can't be right. It was.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
I
yeah.
just had a look. I thought, I had that
Oh, wow.
right.
Because he was a beautiful
Like the
child
ori-
actor. He was gorgeous. Yeah.
1980.
The original
1980.
little... Yeah, right.
Oh, I don't. Well, the 1981.
Yeah, right. That's the one.
Yeah.
God, I
and-
wouldn't have thought he was born then.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's about. Is that like a Princess and the Pauper type story, or
Oh,
probably
yeah.
not? Who
Little
knows?
Lord Fauntleroy.
Who
I can't
cares?
remember. I used the term
Anyway.
a lot. Who do you think you are, little Lord Fauntleroy? Yeah. But I don't actually. I don't think we've watched
funny.
it. I just.
couldn't
but
tell
I'm
you the
aware.
story.
Yeah. So they are my very highbrow sources. I did have a quick look on Lad Bible. It was giving me nothing, and to be honest, I couldn't find much elsewhere. But anyway, hopefully it'll give us a little bit of a giggle along the way. Shall I introduce you to Elizabeth Ann Duncan? Was born in Kansas City, Missouri, in 1904. And we don't know anything about her young life at all. There's nothing that I can find. So I don't know if it was uneventful, but no one seemed to be that interested in it. And there was certainly nothing on record. Where we start to learn a little bit about her is when she becomes an adult. And I've seen her described as a bit of a drifter. And I think she just moved around a lot because she was a little bit of a bad lady. She had been married. She declared that she'd been married 10 to 12 times. Because,
Oh my God.
give or take two. There were two different
Some of
sources.
us not even once. How rude.
Correct.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, she had been married closer to 20 times.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
How old was she?
By this point, she was probably 50.
And I'm guessing she didn't have a lavish wedding
Wow.
every time because that would have cost a fortune.
oh.
You're absolutely correct about that.
Yeah.
She would basically get married as a scam to get money. And what she would do is she'd say to
okay.
these men that she needed to marry someone because she was about to come into money, but she needed to be married so that she would be able to receive the money. And I'm sure she did different scams, but that was basically how she operated most of the time. So she would just move
MO.
around in these sham, she was obviously, it was bigamous because she was still married, I think, probably to the first guy. I don't think she ever got divorced. So they were never legitimate. But in terms of this sort of scam that she was running, she was married close to 20 times, I think. And as I said, in court, she actually admitted to, I think, 10 I read somewhere and 12 I read somewhere else. So give or take a couple of marriages. She was also arrested for operating a brothel in San Francisco and passing bad checks.
Which is the more serious crime of those two?
Well, to be honest, nothing compared to where she ends up going. This was just
Yeah, right.
her status quo. This is what what I find really hard to believe is that's her background, but she was also a mum. Do you know what I mean? So she had a couple of kids. It's like, I don't know that I don't know.
Marriage?
I just sometimes I look at things and I think I can't get my act together and get through life, with 3 kids and no career, let alone be going, I'm running a brothel, I'm trying to find another husband. You kids don't know how hard it is to get through the day. It's like, that's busy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Elizabeth and Duncan had 2 children, and those children were a son called Frank and a daughter called Patricia. And sadly, Patricia died when she was just 15 years old. So it was very much the fact that Frank was totally the apple of her eye, and she had a very obsessive relationship. And just
It never goes well with those mother-son obsessive relationships. Oh.
not real well. No,
It's not a good start.
So I have to sort of take you on a bit of a journey. So I've sort of given you the very teeny tiny background that I have on Elizabeth, which is clearly she'd been up to some hijinks. She wasn't a terribly criminal, but she was, run a brothel, marrying 20 people,
20.
bad checks, the whole bit. But that's all I really know. And then all of a sudden we jump to the side and I'm saying, I want you to know that she was a mother to 2 children. 1 died and Frank survived. And then I'm asking you to move ahead to the age of Frank being 27 years old. And lo and behold, Frank and his mother have moved to Santa Barbara because he's just about to begin his career as a lawyer. Weren't expecting that, were you? You weren't expecting that.
No.
But it's handy. You want to have these people in the family, especially when you're running a brothel. Yeah.
But did he actually pass it, or was he just
Yes, I believe so.
following in his mum's footsteps?
This is where I find it really hard. The description was from his friends that he was an intelligent, well-adjusted, capable lawyer.
Maybe she just kept saying to him as he was growing up, Frank, Mummy's going to need a lawyer one day.
Yeah, well, she was right there.
Will you be that lawyer?
Better get a lawyer, son. Better get a real good one.
That puts a new meaning on that song, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does.
You better get a lawyer son as opposed to a normal son.
Yeah, I suppose a lawyer, son.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So despite his mother's intense surveillance, Frank was, by all reports, an intelligent, well-adjusted young man and a capable lawyer whose friends believed he would thrive once he threw off his mother's yoke. I liked that. And they suggested
Threw off his mother's yoke.
Yoke. You know how that's like a...
Yeah.
I know what you mean, but I also know where Clark is going with that.
Oh. Like, I'm happy with a yoke in certain terms, but I just think in that term, it's just...
Yeah. I knew where you were headed immediately.
I laughed when I read that. I thought you'd like that.
Oh.
And they suggested to Frank that marriage was probably the best antidote to having such an overzealous mum. So Frank took their advice, and he actually began to assert his independence from his mother. In 1957, he stood up to the woman and they had a knockout sort of brawl, well, not big fight.
Punch up?
Well, not quite. Bit of pushing, shoving, and like she was that agitated. And he actually asked her to leave the shared apartment that they lived. So he's basically said to her, right, you're out. Like, I can't do this. I think he really adored her. So it wasn't the case of him walking in and saying, I'm out. I think he would have done them softly, but I don't think that she could be reckoned with, and there was no sense to be had. So I think it's why it escalated so much. So she leaves in a bit of a rage, but to take revenge, Elizabeth took an overdose of sleeping pills in a suicide attempt. Unsuccessful, she was taken to a local hospital where she had her stomach pumped and was there to recover. And herein lies the tragedy, because this is where it all goes a bit wrong for everybody involved with Elizabeth Duncan. If she hadn't have done that, this story would be very different. During her convalescence, she was treated by a pretty 29-year-old nurse named Olga, and I think it's pronounced Kupzik. You'll know, Schmitty, if I tell you if it's spelled. It's spelled K-U-P and then C-Z-Y-K. Kupchik. Okay, that's
Kupchik,
Olga
yeah.
Kupchik. Okay, so she had this lovely Olga Kupchik, who I read somewhere else had not long arrived from Canada. So Frank was visiting his mother for the first time after she'd awoken from the coma that she was in, and then he obviously took note of the lovely nurse, and then he started spending as much time with Olga as he was with Elizabeth. And Mummy didn't fail to notice that.
I love that they met through her revenge.
Yeah, I
attempt.
know.
Oh.
So at this point, I think Elizabeth, for the first time, because I don't think there'd been any other women around him, she hadn't allowed that to sort of happen. And here she is with her suicide attempt. Because she is convalescing, she couldn't really manipulate a whole lot from from bed.
So he threw her out before he had a partner.
Correct.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be fair, Frank and Elizabeth were thick as thieves. It's not like he was off her or anything like that. He just was taking his friend's suggestion and he thought, yeah, maybe I probably should do that. But, gosh, I do love you,
Mum,
Mum.
I'm never going to get my leg over if you don't move out.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
You're cramping my style.
Absolutely.
Go and marry another man.
Yeah, 21.
If Mama got married, I'd jump in the air and give all my toe shoes to you. Anyway, that's a story about another
What's that from?
overzealous mother. Anyway, going on.
Oh, I've never seen it. How
Gypsy.
embarrassing to say that. Apologies.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Can't help.
It's all right. No, there's.
Oh, haven't you?
It's fine.
But aren't you like musical theatre like her?
Well, I couldn't. No, she actually gets involved in musical theatre.
What do you
I
do?
just love laughing
just
at the
remembers the
concept of a
lyrics.
musical.
Yeah, he
The
thinks
whole
that musicals
musicals
are stupid.
just make me laugh. With the whole concept that in the middle of something happening in normal life, everyone would suddenly break into song and dance makes me laugh.
That's hilarious. However, someone put a meme on Facebook the other day and said, this made me think of you, Schmitty. And it was someone saying something along the lines of, for those people who think musicals are ridiculous because in real life no one just breaks into song suddenly, they've never worked with someone like Schmitty or someone like that. I was like, that's right. It is perfectly normal to break into song. I just proved it.
I do that too, but I just think
I
that
know.
like the tapping and all the carry on that goes
The
with
dance
it, I
routine,
love.
yeah.
Oh, so good.
Dream
Yeah.
ballet. Now, I literally
Well, I
will
must
call
say-
the line a dream ballet. That is over the top. But anyway.
I didn't quite see. I don't know why I thought you
Exactly.
were.
God,
But
shame,
I did sort of find that a little bit incongruous. No, because it was because of Schmitty. It's because of Schmitty.
Probably because I'm gay.
Yeah.
No.
No. I think it was our connection because from day one you said, "Is there a musical theatre connection between the two?"
Oh
of
yeah.
you?
And you probably
Yeah.
said no, and I went, oh, they said yes.
Totally didn't listen to the answer and just kept going.
So for
be.
the last year, I've always thought, I haven't really given a great deal of thought, but I've never really seen that side of your personality sparkle.
No, you know why?
Yeah,
In fact, I'm much more comfortable with you being a little bit more like,
Pop music.
I don't know about that when
Yeah.
it comes to musical theatre. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
more
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
All right,
Sorry,
as
we
go.
digress. We digress.
There we are.
yes.
Well, it's all right. We had to do that. All right. So we've got Elizabeth Duncan in hospital, having tried to commit suicide by a pill overdose to show her son Frank that he's made the wrong decision about choosing to move out. In doing so, he has met the lovely Olga, a nurse who is actually looking after his mother in this little hospital in Santa Barbara. So characteristically, Elizabeth objected to Frank seeing Olga and telephoned her almost daily for 3 months once she'd left the hospital. So they obviously had started a relationship.
Telephoned
During the-
Olga.
Yes. During the course of these calls, which she discussed with a friend, her
I think
friend
we
is
might
called
call
Emma
it
Short.
harassed now as
Yes.
opposed to
Yeah,
just
yes.
telephoned. But yeah.
She told Olga to leave her son alone and frequently
piss off,
threatened
Mum.
to kill her if she did not stop seeing him.
What?
You know, if you're going to
Red
do it
flag.
properly. Yeah,
Oh.
maybe. The amount of times she told people is unbelievable. On one occasion, Olga said that she and Frank were going to be married. Elizabeth replied, "You'll never marry my son. I'll kill you first." So it's not like she was
my.
beating around the bush. To her doctor, Elizabeth repeated the threat in a more oblique way. "Frank will never leave me," she said. "He would never dare to get married."
Because I'm
However,
a fucking psycho.
Mm-hmm.
Frank and Olga were secretly married on June 20 in 1958.
That
So
he got
the-
from his mum.
So at the end of 1957 was when the overdose happened. So now we've gone into middle of the year 58. When Elizabeth learned of the marriage, she declared that she would not allow them to live together. Not quite ready to cut the cord completely, Frank stayed at his mother's home until the end of June, visiting Olga in her apartment.
That's just encouraging it.
I did.
Well,
I
it's
have
just
another
trying to
source. I wonder if
keep
I
her
can
cl-
find
yeah,
it quickly,
keep her
where it
happy.
said that the night of their
Honeymoon?
marriage.
All right.
They went away for one
yes.
night. Oh, the newlyweds checked into a Santa Barbara motel for their wedding night, but he had to be home for 1:30. And I mean, it's just
What?
yeah.
And how old is he at this point? 30 something? 20,
Oh,
26?
27, so probably 28 or something. Yeah.
A grown man, though. 100% grown man.
Yeah. The thing I find a bit confusing about that was he wouldn't have told her, remember, that he was getting married because it was done secretly. So that was also probably part of having to get home to cover the fact that he just got married.
Yep.
Why did they get married in secret, do you wonder?
She's
Why
pregnant.
did they get married at all? Correct. Olga is pregnant.
Ooh. Juicy.
Yes. At this point, there is a series of events that start to happen where they call her Ma Graham, but Elizabeth Graham. Elizabeth Graham starts to reach out to anybody who'll listen to her to get help in trying to knock Olga off.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, totally.
Oh my
I mean,
Lord.
I can't believe it got this far because
And
there
no
were so
one
many
did,
people. One
So
of
many
those.
people
as
knew.
usual. Yeah.
Everyone.
So
The
remember,
whole
we've already
town,
gone through a number of
everyone.
people. She's told her to her face, I'm going to kill you.
Well, Olga should have listened.
Yeah. In the middle of July 1958, Elizabeth told her friend
Victim
Barbara
blame
Reed,
much?
whom she'd known for several years.
She's not a victim yet.
No, I'm not psychic, but I
Oh,
kind
me
of
neither,
feel
clearly.
It feels like where something's going on.
I feel it
Then
in
I'll-
my waters.
I'll apologise should it come true.
Oh. Elizabeth tells her friend Barbara Reed that Olga had become pregnant by another man and was trying to frame Frank.
Oh, God.
She offered Mrs. Reed $1,500 to assist her in killing Olga. Mrs. Reed replied that she would think the matter over, and later she
And then
informed...
rang the police?
No, she actually told Frank. This is important.
Oh,
She told Frank,
brilliant.
the lawyer son, right? And later she informed Frank of the proposal his mother had made to her. Shortly thereafter, Frank moved back home.
Well, he might have been frightened because his mum's unhinged.
No.
Yeah, but he is a lawyer. So he moves back to the house.
Oh.
Frightened
Yeah,
for
but
his
he's-
unborn child as well.
No,
But he's also
Barbara.
been he's very close to his mother and he's very
If
committed
he
to
told
his mother. and-
Olga, what do you think Olga would say? I'll just go move back in with her. Like,
Yeah.
come on, mate. You've
No, it's not
moved
really
on.
going to answer.
Yeah,
Let
all right.
go. Cut that cord.
Oh gosh, this is where it gets quite interesting. If that was interesting enough. In the early part of August, Elizabeth arranged with an ex-convict, Ralph Winterstein, to assist her in carrying out a fraudulent plan for the annulment of the marriage between Olga and Frank.
See, I'm all right.
What?
Well, not that I'm all right with that, but I would have thought you'd start there. You wouldn't go straight to death threats and trying to
Yeah,
find someone to
correct.
kill her. The annulment, getting, poisoning the pool to make Frank want to divorce her. There are things.
There are steps.
There are other
You
channels.
should
that one
leap
would-
straight ahead, yes.
Yeah. It
What's
feels like
the
a big
grounds for
jump.
the
Yeah.
annulment? That
I'll
she's
tell
made
you.
up that the baby isn't Frank's?
Mhm.
No, not at all. She pretends to be Olga, and the ex-convict pretends to be Frank,
Oh, my Lord.
No.
and it worked. After a brief,
What?
after a brief. Could you imagine this 54-year-old? I mean, she was 54. Maybe, she was about, let's say, early 50s at this point. She's gone and pretended to be a 29-year-old Olga. What was it? Kupchik. Yeah.
Cupchick or Kupchik, but
Oh, yeah,
either
yeah.
way.
Cupcakes.
Either way. Cupcakes.
After a brief, uncontested hearing in
Nice
which
to Olga.
Winterstein, as the plaintiff, testified that Olga had not lived with him since their marriage, that she refused to do so, and that she had told him she had never intended to go through with the marriage, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, a decree was granted to the plaintiff. Elizabeth later persuaded to propose to Mr. Winterstein, so he's the ex-con who had played Frank,
Right.
to, I've got my quotation marks, take care of Olga. Winterstein
God.
refused, but did not report the incident because he was afraid of getting into trouble as a result of being involved in the fraudulent annulment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who
So
are
when you
these
said
people?
proposed to, I was so confused because I
Oh,
thought you
sorry,
meant
I should have said that.
proposed
Yeah.
to get
Get
married.
married.
And I was like,
Get married.
hang on a minute, it was
No,
just
no.
an old
Where are we
one
going?
married.
What?
Hang on.
No.
That took
No,
a turn.
he maybe
Right.
suggested, I don't know again.
Yeah.
suggested
No,
that he'd take care of. Yes, my
As
mistake.
you finished, I thought, oh no,
Yeah,
I
I know,
understand
yeah.
it now. But I was still going, hang on, why is she getting him to marry this other woman?
Damn
What?
that English language.
What is going on here? Okay.
Gets us
right.
every time.
So she's managed to annul the marriage. I don't know if anyone's aware of that. There's no suggestion that Frank knows or anything. I don't know that she told him. I can't find any follow-up to that. It sort of leaps ahead now to the middle of August, where what's happening is Frank is moving Olga around because she's not safe. So in the middle of August, Elizabeth discovers
we're
where
going to
Olga
the
was
safe
living.
house. We're going to the next safe house. Quick,
It's really
pack
healthy
your shit.
relationship. A really healthy relationship.
Nothing toxic here. Yeah.
Yeah. So Elizabeth discovers where Olga has been moved to, and she gains admittance. You know how they always have like the super or whatever else allows her in for some reason, and she's looking to see if Frank's clothes are there. That's what she wants to see, if there's whether he's residing with her or whether he's been there. But what's important is when she
This woman
leaves,
needs to be sectioned at this point. She's quite insane, isn't she?
She says to the manager of the apartment block, she is not going to have him. I will kill her if it is the last thing I do.
Oh, and
So
again,
another
just
person
get a
she's
billboard.
told-
Get a fucking billboard
I'm gonna
up,
kill
right?
her.
Exactly.
I'm going to kill
3
Olga.
billboards outside Ebbing
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
whatever
Yeah,
the name of that
billboards.
is.
Ebbing.
Yeah, Ebbing.
Or
Ebbing,
3
what was
billboards
the state?
outside Missouri.
Yeah.
Something like that. But can you move your Arnott's biscuits away from the microphone?
Yeah, Savaloy, whatever they're
No.
called.
No.
Move
was-
your Savaloy away from the...
It was a good joke, but all I heard was Russell, 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 Russell.
Now, before we go any further and sort of get into the crime, because we're obviously about to hit that, I wanted to read to you a paragraph from the Times, Times magazine. This was published in 1959, so obviously just after the crime that's about to be committed was committed. But I just love the language, and I just want to read sort of the opening paragraph because it's it's just of the time. So this is what was the article that was published about Elizabeth. Pity the girl who marries Frank Duncan, clacked the gossips around the Santa Barbara, California courthouse. The owl-eyed lawyer was arrogant and humorless, lisped so noticeably that teasing court clerks called him a wicked wascal wabbit behind his back.
Oh,
Poor
But
Frank.
that was the lesser half of it. Frank, at 29, was a mama's boy. Matronly, smartly dressed Elizabeth Duncan, separated from her husband when Frank was a child, held her hand's son in court, applauded him when he won a case, tongue-lashed the district attorney when he lost. So tight was the noose that once, when Frank threatened to leave home, his mother took a heavy dose of sleeping pills and was carried off to a Santa Barbara's cottage hospital.
Why are you
love
blaming
that.
Frank, but why are we picking on
Wow.
poor Frank?
He was a mama's boy.
Yeah. I love that she was carried off to the hospital.
But I love it. They teased him and they called him a wicked wascal wabbit.
He must have had a wisp.
Don't you just think it sounds like when they probably didn't do it justice, but like when they're doing like the newsreels?
Yeah.
Pity the girl who marries Frank Duncan. That's the opening sentence. I love it.
Please tell me that the crime is that Olga found out about all the threats and decided to get in first.
Not quite. Not quite. Elizabeth's got a few more people to ask yet. She's still getting around town.
Knocking on
Getting
doors.
around town.
Absolutely. Now you do. This is a little. It gets. I wouldn't quite say confusing, but there's a couple of new people introduced here in her attempts to try and find someone to do the job. Elizabeth told another woman, Diana Romero, whose husband Rudolph was one of Frank's clients. That's
Rudolph
important.
Romero.
Yep.
Yep.
That
Was he
Olga.
friends with, what was his name? Ricky
Ricardo. No.
Ricardo, yes.
Oh, you're Ricky Ricardo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was he friends with
Okay,
Ricky
then.
Ricardo? Old Rudolph Ramirez?
So what's important is she's gone to the wife of one of her son's clients. Okay. So Elizabeth told another one, Diane Romero, whose husband Rudolph was one of Frank's clients, that Olga was blackmailing Frank and asked her to help get rid of Olga. At Elizabeth's request, Diana went to Olga's apartment to look the place over.
Case the joint.
And Olga answered the door. Diana Romero recognized her, Olga, as a nurse who had cared for her several years earlier.
Oh, right.
And she left after a short visit. Thereafter, Elizabeth offered Rudolph Romero money to get rid of Olga, and he refused. So at that point, they're not interested. They're like, actually, we know who Olga is, and she's lovely. No thanks.
Yeah, we're not killing her. If we thought she was a bitch, sure. What?
Yeah, I know, right?
What is
Let's
Yeah.
that?
discriminate
We'll
ourselves.
just do a bit of
Oh.
fact checking and then make sure. Then
Oh, this is not the
she's
job for
gone
us.
on.
No.
Yeah.
We're passing.
Do you mind
on
if we
that.
do a recce first? It's a hard task. Oh, look, very kind of you to offer it, to ask us, what's it called when we put a tender in for this job?
Yeah, I was going to say we can't do it, but we can pass you on to some other subcontractors who might be interested.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my God, this is ridiculous.
Den of thieves and lowlifes. This
I know.
place is. Yeah.
Where'd she go to next? Let's have a look.
She went through her
during-
son's files and found another
Oh,
person that he once
She just,
defended.
honestly, I swear to God, she just asked anyone she happened to run into. During the time that she was seeking the assistance of the Romeros, Elizabeth met Rebecca Diaz, in whose house the Romeros lived.
What?
Elizabeth, yeah, so they lived with her. I don't know why. Elizabeth said that Olga was threatening her and demanding money, and she asked Diaz to help her find a man to get her out of town. Diaz
Wink,
agreed.
nudge,
to
nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah. Diaz agreed to notify Elizabeth if she found anyone. Oh. Actually, I've come across someone who might be able to get rid of someone. I mean,
You can put these tenders up online, I'll just tender the job out.
Just post bills around town.
I know it's so
I'll tell you,
professional. Look, I'll let you know if I
billboard
come
it.
across anybody.
Interested? Contact this number.
Yes.
Hitman wanted.
You just we take the page, maybe a little top the page, don't
Back
you?
of the
yeah.
toilet.
Bit of paper.
The,
Just
the 10 phone numbers.
community notice board.
Back of the toilets,
Out
all
of
the
town.
toilets, all these little pieces of paper, and some have been ripped off, and you think, oh, did they rip them
Yeah.
off themselves to make it look like there was interest?
On November 12, 1958, Elizabeth went with Emma Short, that's just her friend, to the Tropical Cafe in Santa Barbara. Here's another name. Esperanza Esquivel, who owned the cafe, and her husband had been charged with receiving stolen property. And Frank, as
Dinner
their
thieves, yep.
attorney, yes, had obtained a dismissal of the case against her and was seeking probation for her husband, who had pleaded guilty. Elizabeth told Esperanza that Olga was blackmailing her and had threatened to throw acid in Frank's face. And she asked whether she had any friends who would help get rid of Olga.
Oh, poor Olga.
Esperanza replied that there were some boys, but she did not know whether they would want to talk to Elizabeth.
You know the expression, my ears are burning, and people say, oh, when your ears are burning, people are talking about you. Poor Olga must have thought she had
I know.
a major
yeah.
health issue. Her ears must have been on fire.
Her hair would have been singed. She would totally have a mullet because
Oh,
of all the
so-
singeing of her hair above
And
her
not
ears.
One of these idiots goes to the police and says, look, I know I'm a crim, but there's a woman around here scouting for a hitman,
But
Anyway.
it's the connection to the son and the being the lawyer that I just find that I had.
I
find
tell
it
you,
all
she
to
went
put
through
together.
his files. Although, as they said in the Times paragraph,
She went-
that you read
she
out,
went to
she went
all
to
the
all
court
the court
cases.
cases, and she held
That's
a
true. I
stand
haven't
and
really
she-
gone
yeah,
into
yeah.
that. It'll come out
So-
later.
so
But
she would
She
know-
did. Every day she went to court and watched him in court every
Yeah,
day.
and then hung out with all
So
those
she knew
crims,
everybody,
yeah.
all the clients, all the wins, every loss, where
Correct,
everyone was
yeah.
situated in their
who
relationship
owed
for
him.
Frank, who owed him, who didn't. Correct. That's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right, sweetie. Yeah. So that's where we're at the moment. So she's totally leveraging her
She's
understanding
evil.
of all the
She's so
relationships with Frank
evil.
and the cases that had gone through and who he'd represented. So the next day, Elizabeth, accompanied with by Emma Short, they returned to the Tropical Cafe where she was introduced to Louise Moya, 21, and 26-year-old Gus Baldonado. Elizabeth told the men that her son was being blackmailed by Olga and said that she wanted to get rid of her. They discussed how much this would be worth to Elizabeth and agreed that she would pay $3,000 when the job was done,
That's a
and
lot at the
$3,000
time.
within the
Mm.
next 6 months. The next
So
3 to 6
6
months.
grand.
Yes.
That's a lot of money at the time.
Gotcha.
A lot of money. Yeah.
I love this. In the cafe, the quartet considered several plans and finally decided that Moya and Baldonado would kidnap Olga, take her across the border, and kill her in Tijuana.
Why
Moya
is
said
that,
that-
funny to you? Out of interest.
I just said that they're having a chat. It's like, oh, what could we do? What could we do? Let's break it in a
Brainstorm
cafe. The first time
Yeah.
they've ever met. Like, I mean, it's like, what could we do? Thoughts?
Mhm.
Anyone? What would you suggest, Clarky?
Mm.
A gringo
Anything?
dying in Tijuana makes sense.
Yeah.
Who's gonna care? No,
Who's
I
gonna
don't know
suggest
what.
that?
I don't even get the fact that you can be that brazen about
Yeah,
going
mm.
around talking about killing someone and actually find someone who will do it before you get called out
Before
for
someone
doing it.
says,
Yeah.
hang on a minute. Yeah,
Like-
exactly.
I don't think you should do that. No, Elizabeth, that's wrong.
Not even that. I'm going to go and talk to somebody about the fact that she's running around saying this and offering money.
Exactly.
because
Exactly. No one
She
calls
will
Who else
tell
has he
someone
told?
one day. Shit things happen when shit people stand back and do nothing.
Yep.
Yep.
There's a bit of that going on.
Time and time again.
Big deep breath. And
I'm going to have to apologise for my victim shaming, my pre-victim
earlier.
shaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
It's going to happen,
all right.
isn't it?
Anyway, so then they start negotiating. Lewis and what's Baldonado Gus? Is it? I've forgotten his name already. Yes, start saying, "Oh, look, we'll need a bit of this. We'll need a bit of extra money for this to get started."
You could just call him contact number 12. You know,
Yeah.
at this point, contact 25. At this point, she's talked to so many people about it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
So
We'll need petrol money to get to Tijuana.
That's true. That's exactly. They want money for transportation, a weapon, and gloves. They're not asking for a lot.
Yeah,
Gloves, very specific.
Gloves.
They're so
Gaffer
broke.
tape.
Yeah, we're so broke we can't even pay for the gloves. You'll have to pitch in for those as well.
What sort of gloves?
Elizabeth left for a while and on her return went to the kitchen and with Moya where she paid him $175 she had obtained by pawning some rings. I think they are going to do it, she told Emma as they drove home. She was right.
Oh,
So the two
poor.
young or youngish men that have turned
And
up
poor
have both
Frank.
had done time. I'll just give Moya was a petty thug. That's Lewis. I don't know if it's
Lewis. It would be Lewis.
Lewis Moya was a petty thug who had a bad record. From the age of 11, he'd been a frequent drug user. At 12, he was frequenting houses of prostitution. Past offence included theft, burglary, possession, smuggling of narcotics, and stabbing a person with a knife. He'd served several terms in jail. Just not a great
career
guy,
criminal, basically.
Yeah,
Career
exactly.
criminal, yeah.
He was not a good guy.
Mm-hmm. Which is probably why he accepted the job.
So on the evening of November 17, 1958, they rented a car for $25. If anyone's doing the math on how much they've already borrowed and what they've got left for weapens and gloves.
And gloves.
Did they have that in their expense account, or did they have to take that out?
Oh,
of the,
she asked for the ledger,
first
like
3,000.
Oh, the petty cash. They've got a petty cash in there working from with a little.
I just want receipts. That's all.
Receipt.
Just give me tax invoices and I'll be fine.
Look, you got petty cash. I want receipts, please.
They had to go and get MYOB so that they could draw up the invoices and make it all kosher.
Exactly.
Oh, God. So they've hired the car and they drove to Olga's apartment. When Olga came to the door, Moya told her that her husband was in the car drunk and asked for help. So she went out with him willingly. She was just in her dressing gown and said, "Oh, let me come and help you," kind of thing. I'll come and home and said, "I'll come and get out being drunk." I wonder if that had ever been the case, but anyway, she willingly went. So they went down to the car. Baldonado was in the back seat with a blanket covering him, pretending to be passed out, pretending to be Frank. When Olga opened the rear door, Moya hit her on the back of the head with the pistol and Baldonado pulled her into the car. On the way out of Santa Barbara, they drove to the beach where they stopped because Olga was screaming and struggling. While Baldonado held her, Moya struck her on the head with a borrowed, do you say .22 caliber pistol?
Yeah, .2
Yeah.
attack. Yeah.
Knocking her unconscious and breaking the handle of the gun.
Oh my God.
Does that seem like... I know.
Yeah.
She's
I don't know if
got
they
one
got-
strong head.
I know. Or they've got one
Or it
weak
was a
gun.
really shit gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
She might have been a bit old.
It does seem a bit strange, doesn't it? Anyway, Baldonado tied her up with tape and they continued on out of town. A short time later, they had trouble with the car.
What's a hire vehicle? Yeah.
Oh, and instead of following their original plan of going to Mexico, they drove into the mountains near Ojai in Ventura County. They dragged Olga out of the car and down the side of a hill to a culvert that ran under the road. Because it had been used as a kosh, I don't know what that means. Anybody else? The pistol was damaged so that it could not be fired.
Oh, to smack her over the head. They
Yeah.
used as a
Oh, is that called a kosh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ah, I didn't understand that right. That makes sense.
Here we go. Waiting for the, of course, Schmitty'd know that moment.
Of course. Well, I'm sorry we missed that.
You've totally been groomed to know that now you need to call yourself out for when you've said too much.
As
we do.
you said before, English language. I just happen to know what kosh means, but okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because I was accused of using a kosh.
That's my
in
story,
court
Your Honour,
once
and I'm
got
sticking
off.
to it.
Yeah.
That's right. Sorry, Carla.
No, that's fine. But I mean, I know I've been really silly up until this point, but this bit's quite
No, but
awful.
this is awful, and that's
this is a really
probably why we joked then, because I can tell we're coming to the really nasty bit.
We're getting to the nasty bit. So, because it had been used as a kosh, the pistol was damaged so it couldn't be fired. So, Moya and Baldonado took turns in strangling her.
Oh,
she was
fuck.
fighting so much still, even at that point.
Oh, what?
Isn't that horrendous?
Mm-hmm.
Some poor pregnant young woman, just what a way to go. Not awful. After a while, they could not feel her pulse, and they dug a hole and they buried her. As this was not part of the plan, the men had no tools by which to bury their victim, and later told police they had dug the shallow grave with their hands. Returning to Santa Barbara, Moya and Baldonado hid their bloody clothes and the seat covers of the car. They tried to clean the car by sweeping it and spraying lacquer to hide blood spots. The next day, they told the car's owner that the seat covers had been burned by a cigarette and that they would fix them or give her money for repairs. Moya contacted Elizabeth and informed her that they had performed their quote-unquote part of the bargain. She said that she had not been able to draw any money out of the bank because the police had been inquiring about Olga's disappearance.
And then they said, but we need more money because we've got to replace the car seat covers because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we can't afford that.
Elizabeth cashed a cheque which Frank had given her to pay for a typewriter,
Oh.
and she met Moya by appointment in a downtown store in Santa Barbara where she handed him an envelope containing $150. Later, at Elizabeth's request, Elizabeth Short left an envelope for Moya with a cashier of a restaurant. The envelope, which was addressed to Dorothy, contained $10.
Oh, for
What?
fuck's sake.
Saying-
Where's the 3,000?
Where
that we were
you talking
promised?
about
Yeah.
installments
And then
and then paying
3,000.
it by saying it was for his aunt.
Did she say, oh, look, I'm sorry, guys, you just have to put me on a payment plan?
Yeah,
'Cause I just
$10
can't
a
afford
week
it.
for 300 weeks,
Exactly.
and then I'll start paying off the second part.
I don't know why she bothered with the $10. You know what I mean? Like, what?
I hate her.
This is important. So while she was making payments to the two killers, Elizabeth was questioned by Frank about the check he had given her to pay for a typewriter, and she told him she was being blackmailed. Suspicious and grief-stricken, Frank informed the police and said that he was afraid his mother was involved in Olga's disappearance and was being blackmailed for some reason.
Go, Frank.
Go investigate her.
The investigation which followed resulted in the arrest of Moya and Baldonado. Olga's body was disinterred on December 21, and the pathologist found that Olga had been pregnant and that her death was caused by head wounds, strangulation, or suffocation, such as would be produced by being buried alive.
Oh, no.
Oh, what?
Oh no.
They took turns and they still
horrendous.
couldn't do it.
They
And
still
they took their
couldn't do
pulse
it.
and
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah. So at the same time that was happening, from Olga's perspective, Olga's friends had reported her missing. So Olga's hospital friends reported her mysteriously missing. Frank had been no help, which really shits me, frankly.
Oh, I think
And
we got
San-
the sense of the Wascally Wabbit being
Yeah.
a bit useless,
Mama's
frankly.
boy, yeah.
Mama's boy being useless anyway, yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
But it was at that point when they started having a look, that was when they turned up the phony annulment. And with help from the FBI, they were able to follow the trail that led them to Baldestein and Moya. So that's how they actually came about them, was because it was
Right.
the false annulment that sort of started things moving. Once Moya's arrested, he asked to see a minister, and Reverend Floyd K. Gressett came to the jail in response to the call from the police officer. Moya testified that he talked to Reverend Gressett, he got on his knees and for the first time in his life asked God to forgive him. Reverend Gressett decided that
God
Moya was
said
sincere
no.
and was ready to confess to God and man. Immediately thereafter, Moya confessed to law enforcement officers that he murdered Olga. He testified that he believed he'd been forgiven, that his religious feeling had increased, and that he was sorry he had killed Olga.
Oh, he'll get off, won't he?
Better
A
not.
psychiatrist, Dr. Harvey, testified that Moya was a psychopathic personality who profits neither from experience nor punishment, was a constant danger to society, and was capable of murder right now. Dr. Harvey said
job.
that a sincere religious belief is a good start toward rehabilitation, but that the period of time during which Moya held such belief was too short to permit a determination as to the validity of his conversion.
Nice
Good on,
work.
nice and so. People
More
very
of
rarely
him.
say that.
Yeah.
I know, that's quite, how very sensical.
Wow, I thought
There you
finding
go.
God was a ticket out of jail, but there you go.
So did
Dr.
Moya.
Harvey.
Wrong.
Yeah. Ba-bow.
That's a no from me, said Dr. Harvey.
What happens at this point is Mother Duncan, or Elizabeth Duncan, is arrested for her role in the annulment. And so whilst she's actually being held in jail for that, she's led from her cell and charged, along with Baldonado and Moya, with murder. She denies the whole thing,
Of course she does.
called the whole thing a frame to hurt her Frank.
Of course she does, yeah.
At which time, Frank had hidden himself under an assumed name in a Hollywood apartment until cops tracked him down. Then he scarcely grieved over his dead wife and unborn child, but he was shocked and shaken by his mother's plight. Said he,
What?
I could never recall Mother doing anything cruel. She would have to be insane to be linked into it.
Well, she is. But also, Frank, you've just, you're dead to me. Lost it. Lost everything.
See, I didn't like it when he moved back in with his mum while he was married to Olga, and right there.
I had some sympathy for him being sort of the meat and sandwich and, you know, having a overzealous mother, but no, gone now.
Yeah.
Now,
now?
It's probably time to have a little break because we do have some issues that I would like to explore, and they are a little bit heavy.
Oh,
Okay.
fuck. We've already done Buried Alive. Jesus.
No, we've done
what?
Buried Alive, but we can talk about the court case. But basically, she believes it's right. But what I'd like to explore is something called the Jocasta complex. Has anyone ever heard of that?
Oh, yes,
No,
Jocasta.
of
Yes,
course
yes,
you
yes.
have.
Yeah, oh, okay, so
After the break.
happy to come back to
No,
it.
I don't know.
So give me my moment.
Yeah, take your moment now. Take your moment now. What is it?
Okay, so having done classical societies and cultures when I was
Yes.
in year 12,
Yes.
Jocasta was the mother of Oedipus. And
Correct.
Oedipus is, as we know, the Oedipus complex is around the boy who had sex with his mother, or boys who want to have
As we
sex with their
know.
mother. Well, yeah, no, it's referred to in psychological
like
terms as the
the-
Oedipus
Okay, right.
complex, right?
Did you know that, Clarkie?
No.
Are you
No.
aware of the Oedipus?
You've never
Oh,
heard of
okay.
an Oedipus complex?
Oedipus complex.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we need
Ah.
to strip it right back. Okay.
All right, but
Okay.
but its basis of this terminology comes from this story,
It's flipped on
which
its
is
head, yeah.
which is about Oedipus, and Oedipus was a Greek prince or something. Of course, all Greek, right?
I've heard of Oedipus. I just didn't know what he did.
Well, he was separated,
Mum
I think, from
slept
his
with him.
parents when he was very,
Bumped
very
uglies
young.
with his mum.
When he was very young, so he didn't actually know who his parents were. Many, many years later,
Right.
he meets them. He kills his father because it's Greek and it's those years, and he marries and has sex with his mother, not knowing that she's his mother. But when he finds out that she's his mother, I
that's-
can't remember if
that's
he kills
complex.
himself. Yeah, it was, and that's the point. Anyway, I can't remember if he kills himself. But when Jocasta finds out that she has had sex with her son, she plucks her eyes out with pins. And so that's
Oh,
the
I didn't
Jocasta.
know that.
Yes. So she plucks her own eyes
Goodness.
out with pins because she's so disgusted that she'd had sex with her own son. And I can't remember what Oedipus does. He may kill himself. I can't remember.
I don't think Elizabeth was that bothered, frankly.
That's where the Oedipus complex and the Jocasta stuff comes from. There you go.
Yes.
That's my moment.
Good job.
All right,
Bothered.
Thank
So
God I did that. I did that subject in year 12. Hey.
Mm.
Oh.
I don't think I remember anything from year 12.
Oh well, I tell you, when
Something.
you read these Grecian endless stories like the Iliad, the Women of Troy, Agamemnon, all of those, you're left with thinking these people were fucked up.
I don't know if I even read books in year 12.
All right, so Swanny, just before you go on, I just need to correct myself because true to Clarkie's point about not remembering anything in year 12, I
Yeah.
remembered that all wrong. According to Sophocles' version, Oedipus blinded himself with her pins of the brooch or something that he gave her, and she killed herself. When Euripides wrote it, however, Jocasta doesn't kill herself, and Oedipus is blinded by a servant of Laius. And then, interestingly, when Aeschylus did the same story, he didn't even mention the blinding or the death. So there you go. There are three different versions, but I read Sophocles' version, and I remember the pins, and I was all very disturbing, but it was actually Oedipus himself who blinded himself once he discovered that he'd been
Really?
bumping uglies, as Clarky said earlier, with his own mother, and she
That's also known as
completed suicide.
That's also known
as
as
a
the
result of
Chinese
discovering
whispers
that.
complex, whereby if you tell a story for too many thousands of years, no one really knows what happened.
Well, it's interesting because Sophocles, Euripides, and Aeschylus were all I think, about the same time.
Oh no! What it is that's why you can't trust an eyewitness.
Because he's taking his own eyes out with pins.
Flick them across the room.
What happened here? No idea.
Ah, waka.
I'm here all night.
Apologies
Yes,
for that. Yes, that was my moment, which I got wrong. It's how unlike
Nice.
me.
It happens once every lifetime, Schmitty. Don't worry. You've taken it quite well.
At least I admitted that I had it wrong for all the other people out there going, oh, what a moron. There you go. So I've corrected myself.
The reason I sort of wanted to bring it up was because whilst I said I'd heard of the Oedipus complex, I wasn't aware that there was a Jocasta complex. And
Neither am I, actually. I
I will
remember the
just give you
name.
the
Yeah.
Wikipedia definition because I think I'll just try and simplify it because in a lot of the stuff that I read, and it wasn't a lot to read to be fair, but they were saying
in That's Life.
back in this is not where I read this obviously, but there was suggestion that at the time, there were ways to say that they thought this relationship may have been somewhat incestuous, but they would never say that. So they would use
right.
words and terminology, like overzealous,
So they're
overbearing,
inferring it.
overly
They're-
familiar. Yeah. But so because they're only inferring, I don't actually truly know whether or not it was incestuous, but there's enough to suggest that it was so unhealthy that there may have, and I did read that they shared a bed. Now, I only read that once, so that is a bit
Okay. Allegedly.
suspect. Anyway,
Well, no,
Allegedly.
that
So
could mean they just slept in the same bed.
Yeah,
It
I
could.
mean, I think I've slept with you, haven't I,
this
Clarky?
Jocasta complex
I've definitely slept
would
with you,
suggest that it
Swanny.
doesn't necessarily have to be absolutely, it doesn't have to be sexual.
We
So
have,
it says, okay, in psychoanalytic theory, the Jocasta complex is the incestuous sexual desire of a mother towards her son. Raymond de Saussure, is it, introduced the term in 1920 by way of analogy to its logical converse in psychoanalysis, the Oedipus complex. And it may be used to cover different degrees of attachment, which is important because we're not saying that it was absolutely.
It's not just sexual.
I don't know that, including domineering but asexual mother love. We definitely know that was the case. Something perhaps particularly prevalent with an absent father. Well, he only had 20 other dads or whatever. So, yeah, definitely they were a thing.
It's very Norman Batesy, this. Yeah.
Did you want me to tell you what the origins were? I think you've kind of
Or
covered
Ed
it.
Gein.
But just to simplify it, was the Jocasta complex is known for Jocasta, a Greek queen. Actually, I'm not going to bother. Well,
Just to simplify it. Are you suggesting that my way of telling the story wasn't simple enough?
Anyway, so that's why I wanted to introduce that, because when they go to court, or of course then it's gone to court that everyone comes out swinging like, oh, I found it really uncomfortable they did this and the way she spoke about him was like this. So there's a couple of quotes that I can give.
Come out at the end when poor old Olga's been buried alive.
Yeah,
good one.
A lot of it wasn't the stuff. It wasn't the people coming out saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to kill her." It was more a case of going, "Oh, she said this," and I went, the mum. She was making me feel uncomfortable about the way she talked about Frank.
But it is telling that Frank, as you say, went back to live with her. It's telling that Frank on the night of their wedding had to be home by 1:30. Frank was more concerned, even when Olga went missing. Frank was more concerned about his mother.
Yeah, totally.
You're right. There are a lot of signals that Frank's relationship with his mother was frankly toxic. Do you see what I did there?
Frankly, oh my God, you're good. So
it wasn't Elizabethly toxic, so it must have been frankly toxic.
That's right.
Okay. The trial began in February 24, 1959. And Duncan, who is Elizabeth Duncan, testified that Moya and Baldonado attempted to blackmail her, refuting the accounts of every witness called by the prosecution, including Moya and Baldonado.
But she never lies. She never lies.
She's the matriarch.
Her attorneys then presented the theory that Olga was the victim of a ransom plot. The jury took 4 hours and 51 minutes to find her guilty on March 6, 1959.
4 hours and 51 minutes.
Not long.
She was sentenced to death 4 days later. Frank, Bert M. Henson, and 2 other attorneys represented her in her appeals process.
Conflict of interest much?
Frank represented his mum.
Yeah.
No.
In a murder trial against his wife.
That
can't be right.
What could go wrong? I hope he was sentenced to death too. If he wasn't, he will be.
Sentenced to being struck off as a lawyer, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, at least.
Debarred.
No.
Nothing to see here.
After all this, he continues to be a lawyer. Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't get that. Henson, the other lawyer, was appointed by trial judge Charles Blackstock to represent Baldonado and Moya. Governor Pat Brown, an opponent of capital punishment, ultimately allowed the executions to proceed.
Normally I don't like it, but in this case...
right up until
like you, Clarky.
Looks
so
good.
right up until minutes before her execution, Frank Duncan, fought to save his mother's life. So I've got some little quotes here. There are just little things that people had to say about her during the trial. I saw her every day for 5 weeks. I transported her to court and afterward to Camarillo State Hospital for her psychiatric examination. She liked to talk about her son, Frank. She was in love with him. If she couldn't have him, no one else was going to. That was Mary Fogarty of the Santa Paula County Sheriff's Department. Somebody else wrote, she was a fussy old gal with an eye for the men, said Forgery, now 85. One day, going to court, she sees this deputy, Ruben Zavala, and she grabs my arm and says, he can put his shoes under my bed anytime. Another day they bought seven of
Unfucking hinged, this woman. Yeah, okay.
Another day they brought 7 of her 8 husbands into court, and she leaned.
That's hilarious. It's like an outing from the home.
Yeah.
A percentage of the 22 came along, or the
Yeah.
20.
But
yeah,
you know what was
okay.
also really awful was under oath she actually said she had 4 children, not 2. So
Oh,
I don't know
God.
what, I don't know why she bothered saying that under oath, but she probably did have other kids. Who knows? What did she say about the husbands? Oh, that's right. Another day they brought 7 of her 8 husbands into court, and she leaned over to me and smiled. That one, she said, he was the best.
God, really?
On the night we waited
He's
for the
got
jury
a
to come.
dick as thick as a Coke can, that one.
Oh, gosh. On the night we waited for the jury to... He probably was the only one who had any
Sorry.
money, Schmitty. On the night
Probably,
we
yeah,
waited
yeah.
for the jury to come back with a verdict, I asked her, Mrs. Duncan, if you could do this all over again, knowing the consequences, would you do it again? She said, You bet I
100%.
would. Nobody is
Yeah.
going to have my son.
Saw that coming.
Tom Osborne of Ventura, now 75, was the area's principal investigator. Years later, as a member of the law firm co-founded by Gustav, he would hire a young attorney, Bob McSorley. That case was my life for over 6 months, Osborne said. At the beginning, the police in Santa Barbara wanted to bring murder charges against the 3 of them, but there was no body. Santa Barbara city officials and the district attorney wanted our help. We moved Elizabeth Duncan and Baldonado down here on charges, and we had Moya as a possible parole violator. On Sunday, 21 December, they found the grave. No one was surprised, said Osborne, who was there. Everybody involved in the thing had been convinced for several days that she was no longer living.
Yeah.
Osborne described Ma Duncan, then 54, as a strong, manipulative person who did everything she could to control her son, which included staging a phony marriage annulment scene. She posed as Olga and hired an ex-con to pose as Frank, himself, an attorney, in a Ventura courtroom. That's a really good point, isn't it? Yeah. She got the annulment. She'd got what she wanted. She was chagrined when her son didn't follow her directions or advice. When he was practicing law, she'd attend most of his trials in Santa Barbara and tried to influence jurors and witnesses. One of the biggest things we were able to demonstrate with evidence I developed for the penalty phase of her trial was that you could not believe a word the woman said.
Goodness.
Wow.
Yes.
Right. Well.
Complex.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So she was the last woman executed in California, I believe.
Yeah, right.
Really?
I have it. Yeah. She was the last woman to be executed in California before the United States Supreme Court suspended the death penalty under Furman versus Georgia.
Okay.
So she was executed in 1962. And I'm a bit embarrassed. I don't really understand this. She was executed by lethal gas.
She gas
And then
chamber, yep.
yes, but is that...
Best kind of gas to execute someone by. If you execute someone with non-lethal gas, it's a fucking process.
Helium. They just
Do you
get
know-
really...
Do you know- But you know when you read all these articles and you're looking at different things, at one stage, I'm sure I read a quote. There were quotes from what the last things the guy said, because it was the last triple execution in the US, I believe, as well. So it was all done at the same time. The men went in together. She went in alone. But there was some wording that they had used, and I cannot find it anywhere now, which suggested that there was a tablet or something. But what a cyanide...
So,
Like an
yeah,
iPad.
so
Falling
they
Yes,
drop
is that
it.
it? Yeah,
Oh,
is
yeah.
that it?
They drop it into
like a
a
chlorine
solution.
tablet, and it goes.
They drop it into a solution of
that's
something.
it.
It
Thank
creates
you.
the gas, and that's what
Right.
kills them. And
That's
why
what
it's called a
didn't
gas
quite-
chamber.
chamber.
That's why it's a
Okay.
chamber, because it holds the lethal gas in it.
But
I
it's not
thought you meant
pumped
an
in per se.
iPad.
Okay.
Here we go
No,
again.
I
was waiting for the.
She
of
knew that
course
as
we
well.
did know
Well,
that.
of course she does. No, but you would, and I wasn't quite clear on
Of course
exactly
she
how
would.
that would transpire.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
they just drop it into a solution. Like Professor Sumner Mill.
Julius
Oh,
Sumner
Julius.
Miller.
Yeah,
Sumner Miller.
Sumner Miller. I'm sure
Miller.
he would have shown us how to make, bubbly
Yeah.
things, not from
True.
lethal cyanide. So yeah, same sort of idea.
Bicarb soda and vinegar does something similar, only doesn't kill people.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
It bubbles up. That's right. Yep. Oh,
Yes.
well.
That is the story of Ma Duncan, Elizabeth Duncan, and her son Frank, and their ridiculous relationship, frankly, that's beyond
Yeah.
unhealthy and turns into murdery. So there you go. That's the crime. Would you like to put anyone into Trial by Wine
Somewhere.
World. These are probably good Trial by Wine people, I think, some of them. Trial by Wine World.
I can't remember all the names because
No,
I've
of
drunk
course
a bottle
not.
of Pinot Gris while you've been telling this story. But I would say everyone who knew, everyone who put the billboards up, everyone who posted the bills, everyone who knocked on doors to try and find, everyone who she went to who said, I want to kill this woman, who didn't say to the police, I could be wrong, but I think there's a problem here.
Yeah.
All of those people need to go to Trial by Wine World. And I was thinking about it because whether we release our last episode or not, because that's still to be seen, I was thinking about that recording session, and it was a bit like a roller coaster where you think you got to the top of it, and the most
Yeah.
dramatic thing happened, and then
it's
we were down, and then there was another descent,
steeper, higher.
ascent. There's another
Yeah,
climb, and then
Higher and higher and higher. Yeah.
I feel like we need a really terrifying roller coaster in Trial by Wine World, because that case was a bit like that for us. And I think that these people can all go on on the most terrifying roller coaster where they think, I've passed myself out. So every time they get to a point on the roller coaster where they think my responsibility is done, I've said no thanks, or I've passed on the $1,500 or the $1,200, whatever I was being offered. They have to go back up to a higher ascent, sorry, and they have to, be terrified yet again and again and again, because only one person needed to call it out, and all of this could have been avoided, and a
Absolutely.
lovely, innocent person and her child could have been saved if someone had done the right thing. And I'm putting Frank at the head of that roller coaster because
Thank you.
Frank enabled. I know I had some sympathy towards Frank earlier. I have overbearing family myself, but I don't, have a Jocasta avoided this scenario happening here. So I can understand how you're influenced by those sorts of things, but there comes a point in time where you say, actually, the person who's the most important to me is the person who's going to be my future, the person who's creating my child, the person who I've committed to. And Mum, you've done your job. Good job. Thanks very much.
Back off.
And back off now. And so I think Frank has to be at the most terrifying point, because I don't know in a roller coaster whether it's scarier if you're at the front or the back or the middle, because I don't really do them. But he's on the perpetual roller coaster. And, the minute they think this isn't scary anymore, we add another layer. We do more. We drop it, the drop becomes like I don't know what the degree
A
of
free
it is.
fall.
A free fall, and then there's crocodiles and
work.
sharks or whatever. It just
Yeah,
starts to get scarier and scarier, because these people should have done the right thing. This could have been avoided. That woman was clearly insane, as far as I'm concerned, for a long time. And I don't care whether she had 55 husbands. I don't care if she, was fraudulent on lots of checks. All of that sort of like, the build up to it. But when she decided to ask every person in town to kill this girl, someone should have said something.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Are you saying that he's worse than she is, or are you?
No, she did it. He's weak and spineless. Maybe that's
She's
it.
a
Maybe we
murderer.
remove his spine so he just like flops
So
around
it really
a lot.
is. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh,
I
Lord.
like that, and we could
Oh,
make
Most
him.
favorite person in the world.
We could
That's
make
awful.
we could make him a jellyfish that
Remove
just
his
constantly gets
spine.
washed up on the sand and has to bake all day until high tide comes in again.
Yeah. There's a X-Men show where there's like
There is
high profile. I don't really follow all these things,
politician
but
or
there's
something.
high profile politician or something who's against them, and then they do something to him which turns him into a jellyfish, and then he like flobs around and then
Oh
like dies.
God.
And maybe that's what Frank needs, a bit of flobbing around, because he was utterly useless. I could almost forgive him for all the lead up, but when to defend his mother, who was indefensible, like, Frank, man up, for fuck's sake, Anyway, so that's my sentence.
Nice.
As impossible to understand as it is, that's my sentence.
Well, the whole story's impossible, so you've got to start somewhere, don't you? I think, I don't know, I get quite upset by people who get hitmen, because I actually think if you employ a hitman to kill someone for you, you're worse than the hitman, for one. But also, you 100% know that it's not right. You know that you couldn't do it, but also you're more than happy to just make someone else do your dirty work. And I think, given that that murder's not right, given you shouldn't be doing that sort of stuff, find another way to get back at the person who's wronged you if they have. Poor Olga hadn't wronged anybody, but I just
Nothing
have a
wrong.
real problem with people paying hitmen, and so I'm actually glad that she got an equal sentence to the hitman. I would have liked. I think in some ways she should get a worse one, but she didn't, and
It's not
that's
much worse
okay.
than the death penalty in
Well,
in the in Trouble One World, yes,
I
but
was
in the
going to say,
realms
yeah,
in the realms
yeah.
of
No,
what was
that's right.
available to the courts at the time,
Yes,
you couldn't
but
do
there
much
are
worse.
other
Yeah.
no, but there are other instances where the person who has paid the hitman hasn't got
Gets a
a
lighter
sentence.
sentence,
Yeah,
or
correct.
doesn't, or
And
gets
I
away
have
with
a
it. Yeah.
fundamental problem with that. Whereas, at least that happened. As far as their relationship goes, they could have, Frank and Elizabeth could have just gone and lived in a house somewhere and not bothered anyone with their ridiculous, horrible fucking love for each other. I don't know what that would be like. I don't care what that would be like, but I also know that nobody else has to die as a result of it. So, um, you know, they are both shit people, because how on earth could he marry Olga and do what he did? I think, to your point, Schmitty, that is just a shit act. Moving back in with his mum for all of the stuff that she did showed to me that he didn't really love Olga and always loved his mum. Yeah, just horrible. So let's think about sentencing. His mum, while she did die and she was the last person, but I'm actually not a fan of the death penalty in real life, and I know it's probably hard for a lot of people to understand given the way that I talk, but I actually don't want that. That said, I just don't like manipulative mothers who ruin their sons, and I think that's what she did from a very young age. I think she was manipulative her whole life, and I don't think she was a nice person at all. So I think there needs to be maybe like a Snow White mirror on the wall that tells her.
Oh, a new dimension.
Yeah,
Let's do it. Yeah.
Instead of "you're the fairest of them all," you are the
You're the
shittest,
fucking ugliest
worst
of them all.
wife, worst mum, worst person. In the whole of
Christendom.
whatever
I
that
just like the
is.
word. I like the word.
It sounds religious. I don't know if it is or not, but yeah, let's go with that. You're the
Get
worst
over it.
person in Christendom.
Christmasdom.
Christmasdom. Like, she just needs a constant reminder, and it's a little bit like the legal situation that we spoke about last week, whereby people, you just don't have to be that shit. If your son does go off and leave you, which everyone's son does at some point, almost
It's the
everyone's
natural
son.
order. It's the
Like,
natural order.
if you do love him, let him go, and you
Yeah.
can still have a strong relationship.
You can be worried about his partner. You can bitch about them forever, but you don't get a hitman out for them.
Correct. But there also needs to be an element of pain, which, could be that to stand
back in our wheelhouse. I tell you, I said it earlier quietly, but we're back in our wheelhouse, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. But I think she just needs to be standing on, they used to do those beds where you slept on nails kind of thing.
Nails.
I feel like,
Yeah.
she needs to be standing on nails every time she looks in the mirror. And when she wants to get off the nails, there is actually nowhere to go. So she's stuck in front of the mirror that insults her and the painful feet that she's going to have for the rest of eternity, because I just don't like her. And don't pretend that because you're a mother, you can treat your son like that. You can't. Women like that make serial killers out of their sons. They make all kinds of weird things out of their sons.
If you were really maternal, you would have had some consideration for your grandchild.
100%. But she made up a story that he wasn't even the father. This is how
she made it up.
Horrible she is.
She's diabolical. 100%. Yes.
I just think we need to call those mums out who make horrible.
We're calling you mums out, you
children.
bad mums.
Yeah, you naughty mums.
Okay.
Swanny,
naughty mother.
At?
Okay, so what I was thinking is, I think the waters get muddied around Duncan because Frank is a lawyer. Because what happens is we're taken on a journey in terms of her background and we're thinking, she's just dodgy, right? She's basically a career criminal.
herself.
She is.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then all of a
absolutely.
sudden we get to this juncture in the story. We're going, okay, and her son's a lawyer, and you're like, attorney, and you're sort of like, hang on a tick. I want
Somehow there's a respectability that's introduced.
correct, and then you're like, well, if she was able to get him to a point where he was able to do that, all of a sudden the story doesn't take the typical path it would, because all of a sudden there's a new junction. We're like, oh, it takes us on a different direction. I wasn't expecting that. But the reality is her behavior and everything she continues to do throughout the entire story is still criminal. She doesn't have any, there's no
Absolutely.
part where she sorts her shit out or she starts to do the right thing ever. She's always doing the wrong thing.
She killed her grandchild.
Yes. That's
Starts
absolutely
out
right.
bad and gets progressively worse.
Absolutely, and we just the only thing for us is the audience, as it were, is the lens changes slightly with this sort of respectable bit that comes in, and then we start to go, oh well, how does that all work if he can do this and she couldn't have been that bad, surely. But actually she was. And everything she did from start to end in terms of all of the marriages and whatever else, she just thinks there's no consequence to anything she does.
I never felt that she couldn't be that bad.
Yeah.
The way you told that story, she was bad from the beginning.
Yeah.
And she got worse. Yeah.
Correct. But it was just a case of, oh, I just did this, I just did that, because everything she did was so flippant. Nothing seemed to be...
Nothing stuck to her. She's Teflon.
No, because she was just, as you said, a career criminal. So I would think...
The gas stuck to her lungs.
Absolutely.
Oh.
For her punishment, I would like to take her to Trial by Wine World. And what I'd like to introduce there is a room where she can see out, but they can't see in, but she's looking out and they don't know that she's in there. And all she sees is Frank. And I will get onto Frank's punishment separately, but a version of Frank married to Olga and with their beautiful grandchild having the most beautiful life, where he is totally having no backward glance, no reference to her. It's like she never existed. And she would be totally in turmoil because she thought his life had to totally, revolve around her.
Revolve around hers.
As hers did around him. So if I cut that down and I say, okay, it's like she never existed. There's no acknowledgement that this woman was his mother, anything. She never existed.
The other day I was talking to a friend of mine and I was talking about our podcast and I said that Clarky and I come up with these ridiculous sentences and, sandpaper and blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's whippings, there's all sorts of nonsense. I said, but Carla, who spends her whole time saying, oh, I can't do that, I don't be evil. Actually comes up with the most psychologically disturbing
Correct. Agreed.
sentences.
Agreed.
You come from the other angle.
Yeah, I'm the one who's a psychopath. That's right.
No, I'm not saying that, but
no, it's definitely you. No one was really taking that away from you, darling. Promise.
I'm the psychopath, but you are definitely the person who has the ability to go back and go, what's the motivation? What's the deep thing?
Yeah.
And this person I was talking to was like so excited, going, I'm going to listen. Oh my God. And I was like, listen out for Swanny's sentences because she sounds, she's like, oh, I couldn't do that. And then she
I'm no good at this part.
stabs them, like not stabs them. She punches them psychologically in the head and they're like,
psychological nut punch, is it?
Yeah,
psychological
exactly
nut punch. She's the queen of the psychological nut punch, and there was a great example of it, brilliantly played. What about Frank?
Yeah. So with Frank, I'm doing something in a similar vein, and I want him looking onto something of what he has foregone, what could have been. So for him, again, I would like to see him looking at Olga and his beautiful child.
Oh, yep. Go on.
And again, having an incredible life where he has. His thing was, there was a quote where it said at one point, he felt like, he said this in court, that he was the yo-yo going between the two. All right, so I want him to have no one and nothing. So again, he's alone. For him, it's more about going, all right, you want to play it both ways. You can't sit on the fence. The fence is just sat on it.
Psychological nut punch. Yep.
So, and you're just looking. So don't
Could
go.
he have his menacing mum on the other side? Though, so he gets nothing good from her. He just gets all the nasty stuff from her. So he's getting bad from his mum and good from his wife, but actually can't interact
He's
with
got
any of
nothing.
it.
Yeah,
He's
That
just
might be nice.
alone.
As long as they were both amplified on either side, so you could see just how good Olga was and how beautiful the child was,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how evil Mum was, and
Yeah, yeah.
how he had to watch in. Now I'm going for it. He had to watch, on loop, how terrible she had been, and how involved and how stupid and naive he had been in, when they're in court, when she was there, all of the manipulative things that she'd done that he chose to ignore, because he did. He chose to ignore it. He was a
Mm.
Can
smart
he see
kid.
all the reruns of her
Yeah.
trying to get everyone to murder this girl
Yeah.
in
Yes.
advance? So
And
he knows.
connecting all the
Over.
dots.
So
which
there's
he is
no
definitely-
prevarication. There's no, oh, my mum wasn't that bad.
No.
There is nowhere to hide.
It's
He
absolute
got
clarity.
told, like, you
Yeah.
That's
fuck.
it. That's what I'm saying. If
Yeah,
he
yeah.
if it's presented to him in a way that there is no way of him saying,
Correct.
"Oh no, there's extenuating
No.
circumstances."
I was
No,
played. She
your
was a piece
wife,
of work. Yeah.
sorry, your mother
Yeah.
spent her whole time plotting to kill your wife.
Yeah.
Your
And you allowed
how
that
you-
to happen, essentially.
and then defended her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Oh.
wanted to sentence our murderers, obviously. I'm struggling slightly because I don't really know anything about Gus and Lewis. So Lewis, we do know. Lewis is the one who came forward and went, I found God. It's all good. I'm sorted out. So I thought for him, what we could do is take him to Trial by One World. And I'd like to have him sort of planted, seated within an extreme sort of God-bothering, happy-clapping church situation where they are going to not necessarily drive him crazy, but he's like, you wanted it, you got it. Like, here you go. Here's the most, not so much churchy, that's just sort of not, but like really like extreme sort of happy clappers, the happiest clappy people ever. But I don't know if that's really going to work with him. What do you think?
Like Hillsong?
I've got a thing on that.
Just take him to
Yeah.
Hillsong. That'll do.
Just let him hang
with
out with it.
ScoMo there.
ScoMo,
too.
yeah.
God. Oh, hell is a place on earth.
I, as the only actual godmother amongst us, will go a little bit step further and say, okay, he's passed because he's been executed for his crimes, but he believes that he's, found God and he's forgiven.
Yeah.
I'm going to send him up to the pearly gates and have St. Peter say, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
That's a no from
What-
me, Simon Cowell.
What about this?
And-
What about this? We've just got a couple of things I've got to clear up first.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Talk me through this. Talk me through that. Yeah.
no,
we're still
that's
in
a no
deficit.
from me.
Yeah.
You're back down, or you're in
Oh, well
purgatory,
done,
which
sweetie. I
is
like that.
even worse.
Purgatory.
Yeah,
Well
yeah,
done.
yeah.
Well done.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's good. Also, if you are going to accept money for killing someone,
Ooh.
please get a better gun that doesn't break.
So you have to
Please-
cosh someone. isn't it?
Please don't have to take turns strangling someone. Like, be better prepared. And then, when you still fucking get it wrong, bury them alive. They're worse than, like, be professional about it. Off them quickly so they don't have to. Horrible.
To that point, the worst thing about it is that
She
she
suffered
died
so much.
a terrible death.
100%
And he just
deserve
got the
none
gas-
of it.
He just
No.
got the gas chamber,
Yeah.
he just got.
It's very
a-
true, actually. She
a
would have been dead
comfortable
with one
death.
bullet wound potentially if it had all gone to plan, which is awful, but a hell of a lot better than
I don't.
people
yeah,
having to
I
go
don't want
strangling you.
her.
And
Yeah, I don't
prolonging
want
She
her
it.
dying at all.
She should
but-
live. She's back in Trial by One World in the good place. I like to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
TM, and nothing to do with the show called The Good Place. She's in the good place. She's raising her child. She's happy she's met someone else who's, well endowed and great in the bed. And she's having a great life and everything is wonderful. And she doesn't have a weak-ass husband and she doesn't have a crazy mother-in-law. So I think that Olga needs to be given, what she missed out on in this life. But that motherfucker needs to go to hell.
Gotcha.
Yeah, well said, Schmitty. Well said. I like the way you've taken that. Yep. All right, then. Well,
So
that's
judgy,
kind of
judgy.
that.
Well, thank you,
I don't want
Swanny.
him living with me. Okay, then.
All right, good job.
Well done.
Swanny, beautiful.
Very good job.
Back in our wheelhouse. Love it, love it, love it. And I miss you already.
See, I wouldn't want to be
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.